Alrighty. Welcome everybody to episode 24 of the Breakeven Brothers podcast. I'm your host, Bennett Bernard, and your co-host, Bradley Bernard. How are things going, Brad?
Excellent. And I have a little trivia question for you.
Okay.
How many days has the Breakeven Brothers podcast been in business? Because if you think about it, when did it start? How long has it been going? What's your guess?
I'm going to go 365 days. I think it's been like a year
Pretty
ago.
close. Yeah, about I think 4 days ago, I got an email from our excellent podcast website, Software Transistor,
Mhm.
and it mentioned we got an achievement, and the achievement was 1 year of having the podcast, which is pretty good, pretty crazy. I got the domain renewal email like 2 months ago, which I had texted Ben. I was like, oh, here it is. So yeah, I'm just gonna pat ourselves on the back real quick. 1 year in business, doing our thing, having fun, kind of focusing on AI. So yeah, super, super cool.
Yeah, totally. And I would recommend people that are like on the fence about making a podcast, just do it. It's kind of fun. I mean, yeah, feels like there's almost too many podcasts out there, but like, at the same time, it's fun to kind of find your tribe, find your niche. And two, it's important to kind of get out there and show your face and show that you're a human being. And especially in the age of just AI slop all over the place, it's good to be able people to see who you are and that you're an actual human being. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been a good ride so far, and to another year. Let's do it again.
Yeah. I even coworkers at work will kind of mention, oh, you have a podcast, right? And that gets you somewhere. I was telling Ben I recorded my Twitter video for releasing my MCP server a few weeks ago, and I felt like nervous being in front of the camera. But when I get on the podcast, it's almost like I'm trying to have digestible information, not necessarily I get nervous on the podcast. So
yeah,
it's a nice skill. You kind of put yourself out there, like Ben was saying, and FaceTime, you're a real person. Because I don't know about you, but if you've scrolled Twitter recently, half the replies are just AI junk, and you can immediately tell. I think you can't fake this, at least not yet. We're not at the time where we can be on the beach in Hawaii and there's some face that looks like me and can pull this off. But one day we probably will be there.
Yeah, just automate everything. Just automate your podcast, rake in $50,000 a month. Just living the dream.
So easy, so easy.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, that was a good bit of trivia. Yeah, so we had a lot of updates since the last 2 weeks since the last time we did this. We went to Disneyland, I guess, by the way, in between those 2 weeks, which was a lot of fun. We hit up all the rides there. Yeah, I got a good picture on Tiana's Bayou.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, but in that time, we've had a lot of big new AI releases. So, Brad, you want to kick it off with kind of the first ones? We'll just dive right in.
Yeah, honestly, every time we go through the release roundup section in our podcast notes, there just seems to be a ton of things, and that's what makes all this exciting. But to kick it off, we have OpenAI. They released their deep research models in their API. And when this first came out, this was making waves of, deep research, you pay $200 a month at that time. You got maybe 50 queries. You could chat within the ChatGPT app and it would do 15, 20 minutes of research and come back to you. Now they've packaged this up within the API. So now you can kind of get this for your own topics. Not exactly sure who this is tailored to because deep research still exists, but I'd have to look into the documentation and kind of see where you could make it your own and customize it, because it's just like any other API model. And I think it's kind of on the expensive side. We'll need to double check the pricing, but yeah, it's available in API. And then on top of that, they open source their prompt rewriter. This, I think, is actually a bigger deal than people think, because OpenAI has this cookbook which shows a bunch of stuff, how to be efficient and intelligent with AI tooling. But like, if you kind of think of the evolution of AI back in the day, it was, here's this crazy prompt that has all these keywords that, you're a top software engineer, you're working at Google, you've had 15 years of experience writing C++, like you write memory safe code, blah, blah, blah. TLDR is, back then it used to be, write this amazing prompt. And now we've gotten really good models that don't need as much of a good prompt. You can go in Cursor, Claude, etc., and just say, build this UI for me, and boom, it's off to the races. So I think it's a big shift from the kind of maybe like Cursor era, where there was a lot of intelligence in writing a good prompt, and now it's not really the case anymore, but there's still power to writing a good one. So Anthropic has their own prompt rewriter. I think they call it like Workbench or some other tool internally, or not internally, on their website, and then OpenAI open source their own. So it's definitely an important layer. It's not as important or as big of a moat as it used to be, maybe like a year and a half ago. So yeah, pretty interesting trends we're seeing.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's interesting too because I won't hit on it too much because I think we've hit this one a bunch already. But in that drop in their cookbook, they also mention that the deep research agents have like built-in support with MCP, which I think if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know how much, Brad and I are big fans of MCP and how powerful it is. And I think somewhere in the news or somewhere in the cookbook, can't remember the exact part. I don't want to misspeak to it, but I think they say something like, O3 Deep Research and O4 Mini Deep Research are some of the most powerful agentic LLMs in the world right now. And this is thanks to the native support for MCP, search, and code interpreter. So they kind of specifically call out those three, um, functionalities as part of why deep research is so effective, which makes sense because I think search, obviously, to search the web and find information it needs, MCP to be able to like read through files and read through if you have like, a directory that you're looking through or just some other, MCP integration, and then code interpreter as well. So yeah, big drop. I'm with you. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty fresh, so I don't know. I haven't really had
Yeah.
given it too much thought of like where to use that because again, right now you can just go to Chat GPT and do a deep research query, but I'm sure there's going to be some use cases to where you'd want to set something up via like an API to hit that, and maybe make it more tailored to a certain audience or implement guardrails in the deep research so that way you can't just deep research anything, if you're trying to limit what
Mhm.
people can research on. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see and see what people build with that because yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, there's lots of times when things come out and I think, oh, that's probably not that useful. And then, 2 days later, I see something blow up on Twitter, and that's probably the use case that I should have thought of. But pretty cool. And then along those lines, Cursor released their mobile app, and I haven't downloaded it yet. I think it's a native app, or at least it runs on iPhone and Android. I had seen some comments that it was a progressive web app that you could go to their website, like add it to your home screen. Not
Mm.
exactly sure which flavor it ends up being, but they released a 1.5 minute kind of announcement video earlier on their Twitter talking about now you can tell Cursor to do things on the go. It'll then kick off like a remote web server to go kind of develop on your app. And then once it's done, I think it opens a PR to GitHub, or you can iterate on it before it does that. But essentially now you're able to kind of do what OpenAI Codex does, which also has first class support for mobile. I imagine Cursor is probably not as good, but Cursor gives you access to these other models like Anthropic's models, like Google's models, where Codex is limited to OpenAI. So pretty cool. My first thought though was, damn, this is going to be distracting because as someone who works on a code base all by themselves for my bill splitting app, there are 1,000 things I want to do. You give me mobile access to, an intern engineer to get things done, I might be glued to my phone. And I had saw a comment that someone was making is we're kind of in this era of people trying to maximize agents running all the time, or like coding agents running all the time. And someone had like, I think one of the top comments on their post was like, goodbye work-life balance, because people are trying to spend all this money using agents to get productivity. They allow you to create as many agents as possible using this mobile app. You can ask one task, done, go ask for
Mhm.
another task. And I kind of have the same conclusion of, I wonder where this goes. Is it scalable? How does it operate with like the day-to-day workflow? And is it more fun than useful? Is it more useful than fun? I haven't really put my finger on it because I'll have to try it. But I am concerned that we're getting almost like too hands-on with just having extreme convenience to having AI agents do things, which I love, but I'm also like,
Mhm.
you got to have limits somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that being. I'm someone who tries to like be mindful of like when I'm on my phone and when I'm not, and doing it in the right settings. And I could see that being one that I'm a little reluctant to like do, unless it was like a really exhilarating project and I had time and
Hmm.
I was like doing it. But yeah, that's something that I generally try to avoid, installing a bunch of mobile apps. Like I don't have that many mobile apps on my phone, I think, compared to probably other folks. So yeah, and I just checked while you were talking, and it is the progressive web app. So
Okay.
yeah, it's not like a native like in the App Store. It's like you go in and add it to your home screen, I think.
Not as nice, not as nice,
Yeah, yeah.
but people are dying for it, so I'm sure they could ship something a little bit faster that way.
Well, and it's, I guess, one quick thing on that is it's kind of built into Cursor's announcement they made, I think, last week about background agents, which,
Oh, okay.
because they announced that and they said, hey, if you have Slack and GitHub, you can, basically tell, via Slack, hey, go work on this code base in GitHub and run in the
Hmm.
background, and then it'll do that. And so I think this is a similar interface essentially. Instead of having to do Slack, you can do this mobile installation or on the web, and then do the same thing. Hey, go work on this GitHub repo and do it while I'm not, do it asynchronously while I'm not, hand holding or babysitting you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And my thoughts are, I haven't used it yet, but my immediate thoughts are, I wonder how much code is going to be written at the pace that people can't review it, because
Mhm.
I think people get a little too excited with the vibe coding, and it's getting to a point where I think the models are good enough, but yeah, I'm not sure it's good enough that we can one shot a bunch of tasks and move on to the next one before even like checking the output. So lots of thoughts here I got to unpack, and I think they're setting themselves up for the right spot in the future. I think the models are really damn good today and only going to get better. But being on the mobile interface and not on the computer, getting as much control, easy input, not sure it's fully there yet. So good for them for releasing it. Unfortunate it's a PWA, but I've been there, developed my own mobile app. It's kind of a pain, so I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, but I thought making mobile apps was really easy with AI now. I thought you could just, put it in. I thought I heard
Don't get
that.
me started. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
React Native is a little bit easier now. Swift is still a pain since Apple docs are not
Yeah.
ingested at all. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, let's do this one next, Brad. I know you've been a big proponent of Cloud Code and the CLI interface. I'm someone who does not traditionally like the CLI interface. I like to be able to see my files and just it feels a bit more hands-on. So sell me on CLIs and kind of what's going on in that space over the last 2 weeks.
yeah, I would still like to announce that I was early to Claude Code. I picked it up, I tried it, and I was like, damn, this is good. And so I told everybody about it. And just now, people are getting around to it. So it feels good to put my stamp of I got that first. But yeah, the AI agent CLI battle is definitely heating up. I would say there's roughly like four main contenders at the current moment at the end of June. So there's Open Code, which I think is an open source tool that tries to replicate a CLI AI agent. There's OpenAI Codex, which can run locally or can run in the server, kind of like Cursor's background agents. Claude Code, my favorite one, the one that I pay $200 a month for, extremely well built. They built the model, they built the tool, they use it internally. It's a great flywheel for them, and it really shows in when I use the tool. And then Gemini CLI, I think, is one of the newest ones, if I understand correctly. Then it's open source, which is great, and there's free credits. Google is really vying for adoption, and they'll do that any way they can. And hats off to them, because their models are also pretty good. So it's not like
Mhm.
they're offering free stuff and it sucks. It's free stuff and it's pretty good. I've seen people compare Claude Code and Gemini, and I think Claude Code still wins, but Google catches up decently fast. But more on the why, and I think this is something I've been trying to understand more recently, is I think as developers, it's a really easy sell. Installing one of these tools brings you to the terminal, and the terminal is kind of where developers feel at home. And as I've been using these tools, it becomes kind of an understanding that these tools can do a lot more than what Cursor can do. And the way I say that is because Cursor can edit text files, it can run commands. The interface is very similar to like the traditional software engineer's code editor. That's great, but it's almost like when AI comes out, you need to rethink these experiences. And I think the AI or like AI agent CLI tool initially was like, ew, like we're leaving, a graphical interface. Why would we ever want to do this in the terminal? I think people were a little bit confused and thinking that's not going to do well. But I think some of the reasons it did well is Anthropic, again, created their model and trained it with tool use. So as we've talked about MCP servers, it's like almost like a form of using a tool because MCP servers have tools, but essentially Anthropic trained their model to say, if you need to access tools, here's like prompts to get you to use tools. Previously, a lot of these models had tool use kind of tacked on at the end. So you'd have like a pretty intelligent model, but it didn't know how to natively use tools. And I'm not, an AI researcher. I don't know exactly what this means in practice, but I can tell you as a user of the tools, it really shows that Anthropic has done the right job to train the model to be understanding of tools at a very fundamental level and leverages these things really well. So I think on the AI CLI front, people have realized the power with Claude Code. Incredible feedback from developers online, and the price point at $200 a month is a bang for your buck. And I think since people saw that, all the competitors are coming out and saying, "How can we make this cheaper, better, faster?" And there's a whole spew of software that's built like on top of Claude Code or wrapping Claude Code or all these really cool and unique ways. But I think one, it's very friendly to developers. Two, these models are getting really intelligent at calling tools, and it's a little bit easier to do that on the terminal where the program already exists. Maybe a little bit technical, but Cursor asks you to run commands in like a little command window, and you click like run. In Claude Code, it's just you're already there, like run a command or auto run a command. And I think lastly, one that I've come around to more recently is it can do a lot more. Like I mentioned, you're in an interface writing code, with Visual Studio Code, PHP Storm, whatever IDE you use. But when you go to Claude Code, I've seen examples of people like reorganizing their file system with Claude Code. Like people are using Claude Code as like almost like a raw agent, not really a coding agent. Where I think a lot of these tools, Cursor, Windsurf, are coders, developers, software engineers. That's what it's for. If you're not one of those, you'll feel less at home. Where I see Claude Code coming in is it is a developer tool, so we feel very at home as a developer. But if you can get over the hump that it's a developer focused tool, you can do a lot with it by just asking it to do things. Like it's very intelligent to organize your files, clean up your files, and everyone has a messy desktop or a messy folder here or there. So it's almost like trying to understand how powerful it is as a universal tool and applying that in various areas. And I've seen some really cool examples. One is like clean up your files. I think there was another guy who I think it was like cleaned up a bunch of old transcripts with Claude, like literally any task that you want to, like, you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's going to take 20 minutes. Like ask Claude to do it. Sounds kind of dumb, but the reality is that it can probably do it, write a script for it, run it, then delete it, like stuff that, you don't really want to do. So long story short is I think CLIs are here to stay. The models have been trained to use tools, and having the AI agent in the terminal in the command line interface, it's very naturally equipped with tools, and it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife is what I'm getting at. Is it can do a lot of stuff. Like it's excellent at coding and I love it, but it can do a lot more than that. And I think people are just now getting to saying like, oh, there's a lot more to these. What else can I use this for? And that's a pretty fun kind of adventure to be like, I'm gonna throw Claude at X, Y, Z and see how it does. And surprisingly, it does pretty damn well at everything.
Yeah. I wish they had a better support for us poor Windows users, because it's Cloud Code I think is mainly it's for Mac, and if you want to do it with Windows, you have to use the Windows subsystem for Linux, which I'm sure people can figure out, but I'm just special.
You can figure it out.
It's just not. It just feels kind of icky. I don't know how else to describe it. It just feels like I have to use the Windows subsystem for Linux when we kind of have like tinkered with like Laravel stuff on my computer, and it just feels kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but I'll keep trying. I'm not giving up. But yeah, I do want to try the Gemini CLI. I'm a bit more of a Gemini team player, so I do want to try theirs. I haven't tried it yet, but I do think that's probably where I'll dip my toe.
Do you think they have good Windows support?
I don't know. I haven't looked into it, like the specific CLI, but like I've been writing my Google agents, my 80 using the ADK in Windows, and no problem. So
nice.
They got good docs. Yeah, I'm definitely on the Google team of the AI team.
They're doing well.
Bracket.
Their AI studio is also pretty darn good. So
and they got up to them. Google Cloud Console, where like if you are developing, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, and I'll shut up in a second, but like it's just nice because you can, with a simple command line, command, you can, if you're developing with Google ADK, once you're ready to deploy, you can like do, I think it's like Google Cloud Deploy, and it'll push all that up into your Google Cloud Console, which is pretty nice because I think deployment of these agents can be a little bit tricky sometimes depending on the platform. So I like that aspect. That's just me. So
yeah, and I've been talking about this, but I definitely see the larger shift in pricing. So while Cursor released their mobile app, kind of side news for that is they released a max mode, which sounds like every AI company now is going down this bandwagon of trying to charge people about $200 a month, maybe $250. I think Google's inched a little closer to $250 for some of their subscriptions, but essentially $200 to $300 for an unlimited plan. and I had bought the Claude Code Unlimited plan, I don't know, a month or two ago, maybe just a month ago, because I just got my renewal like 2 days ago. $200, unlimited tokens, and it truly does the job. And I think we're ending up at this new era where people want to have vibe coding be more or less like a slot machine. So Anthropic released a blog post talking about this, where across all the people at Anthropic who use Claude Code, there's different strategies of using Claude Code. And one of those ended up being quite literally using it as a slot machine, which means you have code that you want to add to, and you ask Claude, can you make this change? It'll go do it. If it doesn't work out, ditch it, ask it again. And it's not really feasible when you're working with kind of pay per token usage, because you get this mental state of, oh, like, I just spent $20 on that. Do I really want to ditch it and go back to nothing? Because sometimes you could spend an hour or two here kind of iterating on this. So I think it's a two-parter of, one, they want to get more money out of users. I'm sure people spend $200 and don't use it. Two, I think other companies have it. So Anthropic led the way, more or less, and now Cursor is playing catch up. So I expect Gemini CLI to have a max mode within the next month.
Mhm.
And I'd also put it on OpenAI to probably come out with unlimited tokens for their Codex CLI, in the next month too.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting, because I'm okay with $200 a month. It's expensive elsewhere if you can't afford that, but the unlock you get, for example, I pay $200, but I got roughly maybe $2,000 out of the tokens I've used for Claude since it was unlimited. So
Yeah.
different mentalities. And I think we're converging at a time where $200 or $300 is going to be the new normal.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say if you are posting online about your Claude Code stats, like post receipts, because that's very trendy right now to kind of talk about, how much you're spending. Gets a lot of engagement, but post the receipts. We want to see them,
We do want to see him.
Yeah.
I sent a tweet to Ben the other day of this guy leading with the great hook, a hook that would catch me anytime. Top 10 tips how to improve your Claude Code usage. And I go, sign me right up.
Yeah.
And I scroll down, one tip, 2 tip, 3 tip. I think tip number 7 or 8 has a screenshot of the Claude Code usage, which, for people who are unaware, it's a table that breaks down your daily Claude Code usage by tokens in and tokens out. I say that because they charge differently for how many tokens you type in versus how many tokens the AI generates.
Mm-hmm.
And for each day, it gives you a dollar amount total for those tokens that you used. And for this guy or person online, I think they're using like $8 to $15 a day, which, if you ask me, someone who's used Claude, I'm spending at least like $80 a day if I'm doing a Claude session. Some days I don't use it, but the days I do, it's at least like 80 up to about $250.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw this person, tip number 7 was like, show your Claude Code usage. And I saw it was maybe like $40 or $50 at the end. I thought that what I just read was a total waste of time, because I've spent more time in one day than this person has spent in 7 days. And I thought,
yeah,
maybe we should have a little bit of receipts here, because showing a $2,000 spend on Claude Code, you'd be spending 8 or 10 hours with it. And could you not be learning from 8 or 10 hours? Maybe, but at least it gives you some experience, using the tool. So yeah, from here on out, I demand, if you're posting any Claude Code tips, please lead with your screenshot of usage, and then I will happily read the rest.
Yeah, we're getting to that point, and I'm just going to call balls and strikes. We're getting to that point now where there's so much just hook grabbing, like attention baiting stuff out there that, like, you gotta validate it. There's one famous one that I saw. It was someone had posted, I spend $6,000 on Claude Code, but like it's so worth it. And I think if you kind of read the comments, it's like, well, wait, aren't you on the $200 a month plan? Like, you didn't really spend $6,000. And it's like, well, yeah, but this is what I would have spent if I did it, which is still like valid. So they clearly are using it, but like, you didn't spend $6,000. And of course, in the thread, it's like, come see what I'm building over at X, and it's like they link their startup, or their little web app. So yeah, sometimes with these posts, you got to kind of squint and be like, what are you trying to sell? Are you trying to sell me something? Because I can I can smell it. You can smell a car salesman that really needs a commission. You can kind of smell it on them. So I think you can start to see that on some posts online these days.
And what scares me a little bit on that topic is for people who actually do go ham and are power users. So I just pulled up my stats. I'm ending up at $1,600, $1,680 and 32 cents. So pretty good for spending $200. But people are going off the rails and doing multiple Claude agents in the same terminal or like same project. Whatever they're doing is adding up to a lot of dollars, and they're posting screenshots on Reddit, on Twitter, etc., saying, I spent $200 a month on Claude Code Max, but I'm getting $5,000, $6,000 worth. And that's great, but there's a tinge in me that thinks, as Anthropic, people spending $200 a month are getting $6,000 of value. Is this going away? Is this here to stay? There's a little bit of a confusion or maybe a debate of whether it's here to stay or whether it's, here to stay being tokens always get cheaper, which is historically has been true, or not going to be here for long, which is get people hooked on Claude Code, increase the price to $500 and say, hey, you loved it, come pay us more money. So
Yeah.
I hope it's the cheaper price, things get cheaper. If it's not, I'd still probably pay a little bit more. I'd probably pay 300, 400. But it's something to be seen that I think they know they have the grasp of interested users. What are they going to do with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be curious what your specific usage is compared to the rest of the subscribers, the rest of people paying for Claude. Because I think I'm paying for Claude, and I don't ever really use it, to be honest. I think I'm on like the $20 a month plan. So as much as they have people like you that are really like extracting a lot out of the system, they probably have a lot of people like me that are kind of like doing, my usage is probably literally 5 cents sometimes on a certain month because I just use OpenAI or use Gemini. So yeah, it probably bounces out a little bit, but it'll be so curious to see these companies P&Ls, and see their financials because obviously they're making a lot of money, but like where are they most profitable? Where are they bleeding money? And yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But
yeah, I'm sure there's some power users that are just going absolutely nuts. There are limits in place. I've never hit them, which I'm surprised, but I guess people just go really, really crazy. So
yeah,
we'll have to see if the pricing changes. Fingers crossed it doesn't. I'm still very much in support of Claude Code. So if you're trying to use a coding CLI agent, that would be my recommendation still.
Yeah, I wonder what it'd take to hit that limit. Like, hey, code me a video game in pure WebAssembly like code. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
That,
it needs to be something that it just keeps going and going and going. So it just needs to keep writing tokens out.
Like generate me an infinite number of Fibonacci sequences or something like that, and it just keeps going and going. Yeah. Who knows? Cool, awesome. Well, so moving on from that, there's been some big news with the big players in the kind of AI arms race, I guess we'll call it. And we're kind of defining that right now as Meta, as Anthropic, of course, the people behind Claude, OpenAI, of course, Meta. I said Meta, Google, Apple, if we want to call that Apple. They're out there. So I think the first thing is some very big news is that there's been a large amount, relatively speaking, of OpenAI employees that have been essentially poached from OpenAI to join Meta. And on top of that, Meta very publicly acquired a company specifically in just the wording. I'm not sure if you saw this the same or saw this a little differently, but the wording seemed very much of, I just want to get these people. Like Mark Zuckerberg really wanted to get that team. Specifically, there was like one person they called out, like the CEO, Alexander Wang, to join Meta. So it seems like Meta is really opening up the checkbook to try and get a lot of really top, talented people in this space into his company, into Meta, to build out like a super intelligence team. I think is what he's.
I love that name. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Imagine you better be smart if you're on the super intelligence team.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's very interesting to see. I think OpenAI employees, obviously if you get thrown a ton of money at you, I don't fault them for taking the money, but it is interesting to see, they're building something really incredible at OpenAI. Obviously they were open to moving over to Meta. Obviously Meta's going to do some cool things too, I'm sure. But what do you make of that? What do you make about Meta spending that kind of money to get, at the end of the day, humans? I'm sure they're smart people, but it's just humans like you and I. They bleed red.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not an AI researcher, but Meta, if you're listening, I will take a similar package. I'll work there tomorrow if I get 100 million sign-on bonus. But in all seriousness, I think it's pretty interesting. Like I've never seen a time in which such valuable people were like straight up assets. Like these are not humans. These are like, intelligence assets. And I think the people that Meta had picked or poached or, got to join, from OpenAI employees on Twitter, they had mentioned, oh, they got this person or that person. This person like directly led like O3 Mini or like, top line model that's like really good. So these people, not that not everyone is smart at OpenAI, but you could really tell that Zuck put a lot of effort and thought into getting the people who have been leading the charge at Meta or at OpenAI on important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first thought is like, congrats to them. I know OpenAI released a public memo maybe a few days ago being like, I think there some C-suite said like, oh, they like Meta robbed from our house or some like clickbait title of like, they took our employees, we got to get them. And so
Mm-hmm.
you could tell that they took critical talent, but the fact that they got paid such big bonuses just shocks me. And I think, wow, what a time to go through college, university, choose something to study in, and like end up at the doorstep of $100 million just to sign a box and join a different company. Which I've joined my fair share of companies, and usually they're not that different. I mean, yes,
Mm-hmm.
they're different, but like a company is a company, and so I do wonder how quickly they thought, like, should I leave? Should I stay? Or they saw that
Yeah.
price tag and thought, I don't care, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And so very, very interesting. And I think, Zuck's approach of like being one of the big tech founder led companies is he will throw money at things and see what sticks, like the whole AR VR thing of like
Mm-hmm.
$50 billion spent over many years. And they still make a ton of money. The stock is up. So I don't see this significant spending for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to like break Meta's bottom line? Definitely not. And I
Yeah.
think it makes the competition really hard because I'm sure Meta will be looking at Anthropic, OpenAI, who knows, maybe Google DeepMind. Like all these are open, poachable targets. And I think now these companies are going to have to do the reverse, which is let's retain talent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's pay these people more, come stay and hang out with us. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you kind of yet to be seen, but insane news, and congrats to the people who got these massive sign
Well,
up bonuses.
and it's almost, I think it does two things too. I think one, it kind of resets the market. Like it's kind of like in
Yeah.
sport where you got a quarterback and, you got your Patrick Mahomes. He gets his new, 5-year, $250 million guaranteed deal. Now every other quarterback's looking and going, that's my benchmark. I want that, like
Hmm.
all the other top quarterbacks. And I feel like for this, kind of type of talent, now people that are working at OpenAI that might still be like those top people, those critical people, they might be looking and going, okay, I saw my coworker, my peer get, this crazy deal over at Meta. Like OpenAI, you got to pay up, or like I might be open. I might be listening to
Hmm.
what's being offered out there, because that's the price. That's the market price for people of those skills and of those talents. So that's gonna be really interesting to see if there's more, or if there's people leaving Meta to go to Google and stuff like that.
Hmm.
The other one that's interesting to me when I saw this was specifically on the poaching from OpenAI. So, like, I understand the acquisition of, I think it was called Scale AI, is the one that
Hmm.
they purchased, Meta purchased to specifically get that individual, Alexander Wang. But what's interesting for the OpenAI one is like Meta is kind of, from what I know, they're kind of operating in a different sphere almost with AI. They have AI ambitions, of course. They released Llama, and I'm sure they've got other things in the cooker. But like I kind of view OpenAI and like Google really to kind of be like almost like enterprisey, like AI solutions. Like they're really trying to get into corporations and
Hmm.
have AI be value there. First and foremost, like a social media company. And so I wonder like what they're trying to do with that. And maybe they've stated that and I've just missed it, but it is interesting to see because they're kind of different. Like if it was from OpenAI to Gemini, or vice versa, I would be like, okay, that tracks. I can see, those are kind of direct competitors. Obviously, Meta's a competitor, but they're kind of in a different angle than those other two, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I saw a tweet which, with all Meta communications internally at the company, they always get leaked. And I think it was a leaked memo of like their maybe CPO, like chief product officer, someone in the C-suite of Meta being exactly as you had described. We have these, geniuses from OpenAI that are going to create some great models. We're not in the business of selling like an API endpoint to hit our models. We're in the business of social media and connecting with friends and that whole plethora of products that Meta already has under their belt. How do we bring AI to that forefront? So I
Hmm.
think they acquired these people. They created a super intelligence team, head by like 11, key researchers, Alexander Wang included. Now it's what do we do with these people? Well, they create a great model, but their models are aimed at, kind of satisfying the social needs, maybe like video, audio,
Mhm.
unique experiences, I imagine, within the Meta product suite. So I don't see them pivoting towards, competing with OpenAI or Google. I pretty much expect them to like stuff AI as deep as they can in their products to make more ad money. Not sure
Mhm.
what that looks like in terms
Yeah.
of features, but they are an ads machine. Any way they can make more money with ads, like maybe just, using AI to generate a bunch of ad templates for people. I don't know. It
Yeah.
seems obvious, but I'm sure they've thought a lot deeper about that. So ads, social, I think that's the kind of playing ground that they're working with. I have no clue what that'll actually end up, but
Yeah.
it'll be an interesting concoction of smart talent, social products, AI, which usually think AI is productivity. So I don't know what they'll end up building with these smart people.
Yeah, I almost wonder. I don't know if they're still doing the metaverse at all. I don't. I have no idea. That kind of, I just don't know if that ever really stuck. But if it is about connecting people and friends and all that kind of stuff, maybe there's like creative metaverse. Because you can obviously use AI, and I don't use it as much for this, but like the VO, video model where you can like make videos, and then there's Midjourney where you can make videos and images and stuff like that. So maybe they're going to try and do something similar, that's like on more the creative side. I don't know, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. So more to come.
Yeah, and kind of on the note, like you mentioned earlier, was what are companies going to do if they get offered, if their employees get offered these large packages? Well, Mark Gurman, kind of a popular reporter for Apple, released a blog post, kind of the state of Apple. And usually these are kind of not negative, but insightful, kind of peel back the curtain, what's happening at the company based on leaks or contacts or whatever. And I think in his latest one a few days ago, there was a paragraph describing Apple's MLX team almost left. And their MLX team is like their machine learning on device team, which for people who aren't aware, the iPhone ships with like, I don't know, 8 cores that are like a CPU, and then like 4 cores that are more optimized for their neural engine. Their neural engine powers a lot of their AI experiences. And that's a huge deal because these chips are really optimized for matrix multiplication, which is like GPU side, but it's optimized for machine learning kind of workflows. And the reason that's important is because you can build these cool experiences. So you could have in the future ship like an on device ML model that could run really performantly. And it's kind of a trend in mobile devices or cellular phones in the future is, ship your normal like CPU and GPU, but also ship like a highly capable ML neural engine is what Apple calls it. It's kind of the same thing that they do with video, where they kind of ship dedicated like video chips because video is so important. But
Mhm.
long story short is there's a blurb in the article saying Apple's MLX team almost left, which would be a huge deal because Apple's kind of leading the charge in developing these excellent chips. Apple Silicon is great. People have been applauding them for many years now, leaving Intel and doing their own thing. And I would consider MLX as part of that group. So you can imagine a talented group of Apple engineers building a really powerful ML chip, and we're at the pinnacle of AI, ML, everything is pointing at AI, and this critical team would almost leave. And I think in the subtext from that Gurman article was Apple had retained these sets of employees or this team or org or however large they may be by paying them more, which I thought
Mhm.
was interesting because, as a AI focused team at the heart of Apple, you see these large deals of 100 million, you kind of go, hey, what about us?
Yeah.
We're not treated that well. And then you kind of raise your hand and you get paid more, and then you're quiet for now. So I wonder if anything will pop up. These people will leave. I imagine Zuck has kind of opened the gates for all this AI or machine learning research talent that people will probably start looking elsewhere. And competition is great, so hopefully this ends up for the better of consumers. But yeah, kind of an interesting tidbit that the MLX team almost left in arms. It would have been a disaster, I think, for Apple, quite literally. So we'll
Yeah.
retain them now with some cash money. We'll see what that ends up being.
I think 2 episodes ago we talked about OpenAI partnering with John Ivey, and so maybe
Mhm.
Ivy's got, is it John Ivey or John Ive? I guess
Jonathan Ive, I think. Now
Ive.
now you're making me
Yeah,
confused.
whatever. We you know who we're talking about. Anyways,
Johnny Ive, Johnny Ive.
Johnny Ive, yeah. So obviously he's got deep roots to Apple and
Mhm.
all the products he's built there. So I wonder if maybe he and Sam Altman were trying to poach some of the MLX team because they're trying to build their own. OpenAI is trying to build, or rumored. It's not even rumored. They want to build physical devices in the future.
Yeah.
That was part of the whole announcement, right? So Yeah, I wonder. I'm just making a line there that might not be there, but maybe in the future that team will be looking over there saying, hey, like I'm ready to work and you pay me well, so let's do it.
Yeah, yeah. Ex Apple people are pretty good, especially that team sounds quite useful.
Yeah, cool. And then last news on like the big kind of big players that we've been talking about. Something I found really interesting was both Google and Meta have signed in recent news. I think this is probably the last 3 or 4 weeks. Have signed multi-year like nuclear energy deals, and to me, this kind of stuck out. One, because like nuclear energy, you don't really hear about as much. I think it's coming back. I think there's definitely a lot of push with tech companies to bring back nuclear energy for all the climate reasons and energy needs that they have. But specifically, what was interesting about this was in both kind of press releases, this was kind of done with saying, hey, like we're going to need this to secure our energy to power our data centers and our AI. And in fact, the Meta announcement, the I can't remember who the person was, but it was someone from Meta that was kind of part of the announcement, the press release. And they specifically, I'm just reading the quote here, when they bought the energy deal, it was to quote securing clean, reliable energy is necessary to continue advancing our AI ambitions. So like they call it out plain and simple, like this is part of our AI push is to get this energy. And I think that makes sense because I think people often see Chat GPT and they get the use case out of it, but like underneath the surface, like these things are consuming energy, and there's not a free lunch when it comes to like what they consume. Like they consume energy, and so
Hmm.
it's interesting to see that like tech companies are kind of looking maybe around the corner, maybe around 3 or 4 corners of like, hey, it's gonna be really important for our success to have like locked in contractual agreements with energy companies, and specifically nuclear energy, to power all this stuff up.
It's actually insane thinking about nuclear energy powering my Chat GPT queries of
Yeah.
is this food healthy or just like other random stuff like that.
Yeah, it's wild. And then also too, we haven't talked about this much on the podcast because it's kind of outside of our understanding. Or at least I'll speak for myself. But quantum computers, Google is making a big push into quantum computers as well. Like they've announced that. Um, I think Sundar, the Google CEO, said in an interview that like we are at where we are with quantum computing right now is like where Chat GPT was in like 2017 or 2018. So basically saying like we're 3 or 4 years away from like having some big breakthroughs with quantum computing, which supposedly has a ton of implications. I am not an expert in that, but I guess
Hmm.
they are very expensive and they cost a lot of money and cost a lot of energy. And so certainly, again, needing all that energy for AI for these quantum computers, they're planning for the future, which is smart on their part, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of news probably in the past year, maybe not news, but speculation of how much energy and water, like, OpenAI was using for various queries into their ChatGPT product. And I think Sam Altman came out early June this year saying each query takes about 0.34 watt hours of electricity and a few drops of water, comparing this to Washington Post estimate that a chat GPT response or email would take about a full bottle of water for 100-word email. So I think they're a little off on the estimate. However, there is a little bit slight concern with Sam's post because there's not that much data to back it up. So I think he had come out with that statement to kind of ease the burden because I think there's a lot of environmental folks who are very concerned that AI is great, but the byproduct of consuming water, electricity, zapping the grid, not so great. So I think that kind of adds up with maybe with nuclear energy could be a safe, hopefully safe alternative just to not zap the environment. But of course, that has its own concerns. So
Mhm.
yeah, it sounds very, very interesting. And on the one last point is the quantum computer stuff has a direct impact to crypto, where I think
Mhm.
supposedly if this quantum computer could be as powerful as some say, maybe it could crack some of these really complicated encryption algorithms that we use today to secure pretty much lots of technology. So if that's the case, we're all screwed. But until then, I think we have many years to enjoy some of our secure encryption so far.
Yeah, I for those that are interested, Marquise Brown Lee, right?
Hmm.
MKBD, whatever his name is. Him, and then there's a girl, I think her name was Cleo. They did a conjoined. I think she's like a similar as him, kind of like a tech reviewer, YouTuber. They did like a conjoined video about quantum computers. It was really cool. So definitely check it out because they talked about the encryption aspect of quantum computing. And I guess the algorithm or like the framework, I'm not a cryptography expert at all, but from what the video sounded like, there's like an algorithm that underpins a lot of cryptography for like our passwords and stuff like that. It's called RSA, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that with quantum computers, like RSA would be like completely moot and that they would need to figure something else out. So, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
interesting to see where that all goes.
Yeah, I think any tweet from Sundar about quantum computing always kind of rattles the crypto markets because it's like, oh, is it over?
Yeah.
So he has some control in that regard.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And one thing I want to chat about was we've been talking so much about vibe coding, and I saw this tweet from Karpathy talking about it's not the prompt engineering anymore, but it's context engineering. And I think I really like this and subscribe to this because as I've been working with Cursor, with Claude, the main skill is understanding how to talk to the AI tool. But as we've gotten longer context windows, so you can talk more to it, how do you have just the right amount of content, not too little, not too much? And so he coined the term context engineer, which I really, really love. I'm hoping this sticks because it gives a little bit more legitimacy and intention behind it, where I think vibe coding, prompt engineering, people see these terms and kind of laugh or scoff and think, oh, it's not serious work. But as I've been using AI at work, at my 9 to 5 and outside of my 9 to 5, these are tools that are here to stay. And I personally don't really love the vibe coding. It feels very unprofessional. So now what I would consider myself as a context engineer. We got this new title, new fancy, label for what I do. But essentially, I'm trying to provide AI with the utmost full detailed context, not too much, not too little. I think that is the skill. Yes, it's the same for prompting, but it has a different meaning behind it. You have to use more tools, more thought, more intention behind it. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on this shift in terminology?
Yeah, I mean, I do like it. I do think vibe coding it's fun to say, and it is fun to kind of get the project started. But like we've talked a lot on this podcast about like any good product needs that thorough review, like that element of control where things don't get built without like intent behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I think is definitely needed for sure. And so yeah, I mean, I think so much of like using AI effectively is like managing the context, because if you just let it be an open book, like you're going to get generic answers that aren't really super applicable to your use case or your query. So yeah, it makes sense to me. I hadn't heard that term until you showed it to me, but yeah, I fully am with it.
Yeah, hopefully it's here to stay. I think as engineers, it's like automations, optimizations, and it feels like context engineering is more along those lines of optimizing the LLM performance, making sure that every token counts in a positive way. Where I feel like prompt engineering is just sending so many like
Yeah.
keywords, buzzwords, phrases to try to trigger some latent memory in the AI or like some condition for the LLM to generate the next token that is one that you like more than your previous prompt. So it feels like context engineering is hopefully here to stay, and it's a bit more developer focused, where prompt engineering feels more user centered. Create this feature, but context engineering is I want to update this code, update these tests. Here's the background on it. Go. So it feels different. Hopefully, it's here to stay. I love how these terms pop up quite frequently in the AI space, where someone just kind of thinks about something and thinks vibe coding is cool, but we're in the next evolution. And if you're in the AI space, we move a mile a minute. So these new terms pop up every week. I've told Ben sometimes before we hop on the podcast is when are we going to come up with the next term? So we're not there yet, but I would love to coin my own term like context engineer, because sometimes you got the right word and people read it like, oh, that feels right.
Mhm.
So we'll eventually get to something, hopefully before the 2-year mark, where we've coined our own phrase, and hopefully it spreads. But if not, it'd just be fun to kind of run with our own AI
Yeah.
wording phrase, because there's so much out there today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, cool. And I think the last thing that we want to wrap up with on this episode was just, I think it came from a quote from the Cloudflare CEO, or like he did an interview, and basically what came out of that was him stating that Cloudflare handles 20% of global traffic, and he, the CEO, warned that AI bots are like completely reshaping the web, and so publishers need to adapt or risk being left behind. And included in there were some stats. So, Brad, you want to mention the stats? Because I think you had to kind of put this on there, and just kind of like let that sink in. Because 10 years ago, you were writing I unfollow, I think, or maybe that was even further back. But like, 10 years ago, we're going to say, oh, that seems like a long time ago, but it really wasn't compared to now and like how far things have changed.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes with the AI slop, culmination of AI intelligence getting better and better. But yeah, the Cloudflare CEO kind of talked about 10 years ago, Google crawled maybe 2 pages per visitor, meaning, it got a decent amount of information and it was able to have good results for 2 pages. 6 months ago, compared to 10 years ago, Google's maybe 6 pages to one visitor. OpenAI, on the other hand, is 250 pages to one visitor, and Anthropic is 6,000 to one. Supposedly today, I don't know if these are 100% accurate, but I think it gives you the gist, is Google is now crawling 18 pages per visitor, OpenAI 1,500 pages per visitor, and Anthropic 60,000. So across the board, like 10x, 20x, it's pretty insane. But the TLDR is the web is being scraped at an unprecedented scale by these AI agents because people are hopping into ChatGPT, hopping into Claude, asking, how do I change my tire? Click the web search icon and go. And that in the background, Anthropic, OpenAI, whoever is going to Google, to any other reputable search engines, scraping the crap out of their content. So, probably typing in a few queries, seeing the top 10 pages, clicking on each of the links, reading every page from that result, then summarizing that and giving you the answer. It's great because if you think of a human workflow, I would do that myself. If I had a question of how to change a tire, I would go Google it, go look at the top 3, think about what that might mean and apply it. Now I can go to AI and do that. And so it becomes this kind of issue where AI is so well equipped to search things. Like, is it even worth it to create your own original content if I'm going to be one of 60,000 pages that Anthropic scrapes to answer a user query? How do I ever get real traffic? Like, what happens? I mean, Google's even pushing the search labs like AI overview. If I ask anything or type anything in Google, I get this immediate blurb before I see any search results that, Google has done the heavy lifting for me. So we end up at this weird spot where people like writing original content traditionally because it appears on Google and they click on it. Now it's being summarized by AI, so it is even worth it. Now we're getting the AI slop era where people are using AI to create content that's being consumed by AI, and now it's just feeding along in itself. So I don't know where it's going. It's something that I have a personal blog I write from time to time. I enjoy writing on it, but I'm not so much a publisher, but I can feel as like a large publisher might be thinking, how do I get value, money out of the original content that I write? Because today, these AI agents and tooling and ChatGPT like interfaces are really taking out the manual process of reading things, and you don't really get the raw value as a human anymore. Now it's just filtered through AI agents.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because it's like, I just used Gemini earlier today because my AC unit is busted. And so I took pictures of like AC unit and the capacitor and like just trying to kind of make sense of like what's going on, like why is this not working? And it gave me a response. And like if you think about when it's responding, it's basically generating that response out of like a body of knowledge that it scraped from the internet, right? Like it read articles, it read manuals, it read all these things. And those people really don't get that credit for that. And so there might be kind of that's kind of an issue, I think, because if you had a search engine, like a traditional search, you would click that person's page or that company's page, and like hopefully that was original content on their part and they didn't plagiarize it from somewhere else. But like at least in that case, like, oh, you went to acrepair.co and like saw their content. Where now with those kind of AI overviews, it kind of just says, hey, don't worry about that, this is what you need to know. And so like I think it's one of those weird things where I think it's better for the consumer, like it's better for me to kind of just
Right, it's a tough
get the
spot.
answer. Yeah, but like at the same time, Google, are they, and this is just more of a philosophical question, it's not picking on Google specifically, but are these companies taking advantage of all the content that's been put out there to kind of build this body of knowledge, which they do charge for, right? Like they charge, monthly subscriptions to use ChatGPT and use Google, Gemini and stuff like that, right? So, um, you know, I think the contrarian point of view is like, well, these companies put that stuff online for free, so like, all Google is doing is what you and I would do, like just read the article. But it feels a little bit unique, and I think to the point about AI slop, that's why it kind of ties into what we've said at the beginning of this podcast. Like if you're making content these days, it's got to be video, I think, or like at least audio to show that you're not just
Yeah.
repackaging, just written other people's written content or AI slop, because I think everyone's seen those LinkedIn posts, and like it's almost every other LinkedIn post. Like I could go on a rant about this, but like it's just so much crap that you see out there, and like everyone knows it is fake. Like everyone knows these are bots, and so if you want to show up like authentically, you know, either you write like really original content, like you have your own unique kind of point of view and your own perspective and your own tone of voice. That can be kind of hard to do, or you do video and audio like we're doing here, and
Hmm.
show people that you're a human, that you make mistakes, that you trip on words, and that you're just a
Yeah.
real person and not just a robot. So
It's going to
um,
become more valuable to have a little mix up, because if you're like me and use LinkedIn, like me and Ben, the one telltale sign of AI content, I swear, is an M dash. So the kind of the long dash, not the dash that's 3 - 2 dash, like the minus sign, but it's almost like
mhm.
a double length dash. And usually, I don't even know how you even get to that key on
Yeah, I
your
don't know
keyboard.
either.
To be quite honest, maybe you
Yeah.
like hold it down or shift or control. I think that alone tells you that if you see an M dash, like it's literally EM dash, that is probably AI content. So for those of you trying to get around the AI detection, maybe ask AI to write you content, detect, look visually yourself. And does it have an M dash? If it does, remove it. Because now, literally, anytime I see that, I think AI content. There was a
Mhm.
post on Twitter a few months ago talking about the top Reddit posts all had like M dashes over the past 6 months. And they're like, well, people are going to AI, super intelligence, and asking it to write an amazing, incredible hook to go popular on Reddit, and it does well. Like it clearly does well, and I don't fault it for that, but it just doesn't feel amazing. I don't know how to put
Yeah.
it. The search engines, I don't want to use them anymore. I want to use AI to get answers quicker and faster. But then you come down the spiral of like, it's going to start reading AI generated content, which is probably not super accurate to begin with, and it keeps going and going. I don't know where it bottoms out, but we're at the current stage where the internet is mostly original content, and now it's shifting to be more AI generated. In 5 years, I don't know. It's going to be all AI generated probably, and it's going to have a whole host of new problems to detect original content. And at that point, I imagine the video models will be so good, I can just have a mini prompt of like, hey, create a Breakeven Brothers podcast, episode 25 with Ben. Figure out the content. It'll go scrape the web, fill us in here, and we'll be done. Okay, MRR, we're done. So
Yeah.
it'll be a
Yeah.
fantastic future.
Yeah, it's really funny. It reminds me of one thing, and then we'll move to bookmarks. But I remember seeing on YouTube, I got like a YouTube ad, and it was someone talking. They made it look like with their background and their mic setup and like the angle that they were like on the Joe Rogan podcast. They had like the red velvet curtains behind them, and it was like some like and that's what it was. I think it was for some like just like Ozempic type medicine, but it wasn't legit. It was like clearly like some just stupid ad that someone was paying for to run. But yeah, they try to make it seem like they were talking like on the Joe Rogan podcast to kind of course, impart on a viewer and a gullible viewer that they were someone of influence and of importance, right? So it's just the tactics are so sneaky and clever, and that's not new. Like the whole phrase "snake oil salesman" was around way back when, right? Because people try and do these little tricks and sleight of hands to get you to open up your wallet and buy something. So it's not new in and of itself, but the tools are new, and people need to be internet literate to be able to really sift
Mm-hmm.
out what's BS and what's not. So
Yeah, I know these companies do like internal phishing, and I imagine if they did that internal phishing with like modern AI tools, it would be quite hard to detect, and it would catch a lot of people. But I think it would be so effective, there's no point even doing that. So
yeah,
be careful out there.
I saw just on the topic of fishing really fast. I saw this hilarious meme. It was the Ryan Gosling meme where he's like at the Oscars and he wins, but he's like confused and like surprised. Have you seen that one?
I've not seen that.
Then it won't make sense. But for those that are listening that have seen that, and you can envision it in your head, the like caption of the meme was like, when you pass the company phishing test because you don't read any of your emails. And it was like him like surprised that he was winning something.
I just looked it up. That totally lines up. That's a good caption.
I'll find the meme. It was so good. But yeah, cool. Awesome. So should we switch over into bookmarks and start wrapping this one up, Brad?
Yeah, I can start. So I found a kind of an intelligent bookmark, which I love to share the little, quick wins. So OpenAI basically has their transcription API, which allows you to, take audio and transcribe it to text. Adrian, who actually I think is the founder of Simple Analytics, now that I look at it, which is kind of like a Google Analytics alternative. But essentially, his tip of the day, which I am resharing, is run your audio file through FFmpeg, which is a command line tool that just does audio and video operations. You can run one command to speed up your audio file by 2 or 3x. Therefore, when you send it to OpenAI, you're being charged less because they charge by the minute. So, for example, if we had our 60-minute podcast and I sped it up by 2x, it ended up being 30 minutes, and I'd pay half the price because OpenAI is still able to transcribe things accurately, but it's shorter content. And if you use timestamps, that's kind of the top comment of his tip is, times it by 2, times it by 3. Hopefully, I think that the math works out in that. But yeah, if you want to save a little money, transcribing your text, speed it up locally, send it to the API, and maybe you can build a business off that. That's half the price for content. So yeah, thanks Adrian for that awesome tip.
That's cool. $50,000 SaaS right there. Vibe code it. Awesome. Cool. My bookmark is from actually a good friend, longtime friend of Brad and I's, Justin Anderson, who's a fellow accountant. So automatically puts in the W column right there. But he's been posting some cool stuff, specifically from the OpenAI cookbook. And I think he actually posted another one from Anthropic. So he's been posting a lot of good stuff. Follow him on LinkedIn or Twitter. But what he posted that I specifically bookmarked was data extraction and transformation in ELT workflows using GPT-4o as an OCR alternative. So obviously a big mouthful of a title, but in accounting, OCR, which I think is like optic character recognition. Don't quote me on that. But basically,
I think optical, but yeah, close enough.
Okay. So basically, like being able to from an image identify like numbers and text, and basically it's really important in accounting. The classic example is like receipts. So like someone takes a picture of the receipt. You want to tell using OCR historically, like find out what the charges are and how much they are, and just import it into our accounting system instead of having me look at the receipt and hand key it in manually. So what was cool with the cookbook that Justin had linked was it talks about using 4o instead of like a structured OCR workflow to just get that data that you need off the receipts. And that's actually something that I have experimented with personally as well, because I was working with just kind of prototyping, making like an agent that is in Slack to where you can Slack it an image of your receipt and have 4o read the contents of the receipt. So identify the vendor, identify the amounts, and then also use, of course, an MCP server to like get a listing of like different expense codes that we have, and basically use that context and of course like a system prompt of like, hey, I need you to look at this receipt, identify the amounts, and then once you have the amounts and like a description of what they are for, identify the expense codes that they belong to, and like you give it examples to help kind of really refine, almost like machine learning, like pre-training. I wouldn't call it that, but like you just give examples and it kind of helps with accuracy down the road. And that worked pretty well. Like it actually worked really well to kind of pull off the data you need from those receipts. And it could be, a crumpled piece of paper that was like laid on a table, or it could be like just a very nice, clean, fully bordered shot. And it did a good job either way. So definitely worthwhile checking out. I haven't read the full cookbook, but I did read kind of the like abstract. And when I'd read it, or when I saw he had posted it, I was like, oh, I've done a little bit of that personally with my own kind of stuff. So I think it's really cool for accounts to check out, because there is a lot of use cases in that kind of stuff. I mean, we still surprisingly do a lot of things on paper in accounting. So it's good to have an interface to bring that into the digital media.
Yeah. That's awesome. I also fight with receipts on my bill splitting app, and I know firsthand how important it is to have a good photo. I've seen users upload shifted photos and it doesn't work,
Hmm.
and out of my hands because that's AI processing it. So
Yeah,
if you do take receipts of photos, just a little quick tip: make sure it's square, cropped, flat. For all the people out there who think computers are that good, they are just looking at it with the best of their ability. So
that sounds
quick
personal.
quick
That
shout
that,
out.
that doesn't sound like a PSA. That sounds like a favor that you're asking.
We'll talk any more about that one, but let's move on. So we talked about a lot of things today. I think overwhelmingly the AI kind of CLI battle is an important and big one for me. So if you have not used Claude Code, I will repeat myself every episode from here on out to the end of the year until it you know gets dethroned. But please try Claude Code. You can do the pay as you go model initially. Try it out. If you have the bank and you're using Cursor or Windsurf, I would give it 1 month to spend $200 and just give it a full run. I think you'd be impressed and surprised at how good it is. And secondly, you can do a lot more than just writing code. So if you have tasks that you don't want to do, you have configuration on your computer you want to fix, even Apple Mac OS settings, like all the Mac OS settings can be configured through the command line. So you could just ask it to do things. And I think as someone who's inching closer to like giving Claude more and more control and doing more things for me, I would encourage all of our listeners to just try out Claude Code and give it a task that you wanted to get done, but you felt like it was too much effort that's outside of coding. Kind of let us know what that is. I'm very curious what our listeners are doing with Claude Code if you're picking it up and what unique use cases you're spending your tokens on outside of the coding domain. Because there's a lot, I think, that people have not realized we could do with it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think some of the best ways to get ideas or get inspiration is from people sharing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely let us know. Leave it in the comments. And while you're at it, give us a 5-star review if you're liking what we're putting out there, because it means a lot to the show and to Brad and I. So, but yeah, let us know what you're working on, what you end up demoing and trying out, because it's always good to hear what people are kind of seeing, how they're seeing things, and how they're experimenting with things. So.
Yeah. Just post a video on Twitter and tag us, and we'll take a look.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Well, let's wrap
Cool.
that one up, Brad. Good stuff. And yeah, we'll do it all again next time.
Awesome. Sounds good. See
See
ya.
ya. Thank you for listening to the Breakeven Brothers podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you may be listening from. Also, be sure to subscribe to our show and YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Thanks and take care. All views and opinions by Bradley and Bennett are solely their own and unaffiliated with any external parties.